The observation deck was packed with scientists from a dozen different worlds, all watching the same thing. The air recyclers hummed softly in the background, mixing with the quiet beeps and chirps of monitoring equipment. Dr. Rachel Hayes stood near the main viewport with her son Tommy pressed against the glass, his breath fogging it up as he stared at the massive creature below. "Is she really dying?" Tommy whispered, his voice barely audible over the ambient noise. Rachel put her hand on his shoulder. "I'm afraid so, sweetheart. That's the Sarix down there. She's the last of the Kael'Varion, the Star Dragons. Been like this for 300 years now." Tommy had read about the Star Dragons in school. Ancient beings that supposedly lived among the stars themselves, moving between worlds like humans walked between rooms. But seeing one in person was different. She was absolutely massive. Her body wrapped around the small moon like someone hugging a basketball, except this basketball was an entire celestial body. Her scales looked like they were made of crystal or diamond, catching the distant sunlight and throwing it back in weak, fading colors. Even from way up here in orbit, Tommy could see the cracks running through those scales like broken glass. Her light pulsed slowly, getting dimmer with each beat, like watching a candle struggle against the wind. The Vril ambassador floated nearby. It looked like a giant jellyfish, all translucent and glowing with different colors that seemed to show its mood. Right now it was pulsing deep blue and purple. "We are witnessing the end of an era," it said through its translator device. "When she passes, the Kael'Varion will be extinct. Gone forever from this universe." The other scientists nodded solemnly, taking notes and recording data. To them this was history. A rare event to document and study. The last of an ancient species finally giving up after holding on for centuries. They talked in hushed voices about cellular decay rates and energy signature patterns. But Tommy wasn't listening to any of that. He was watching her eye. Even from orbit he could see one massive eye barely cracked open, staring out into empty space. It reminded him of his grandma Betty in the hospital last year, lying in that bed, staring at the ceiling. That same look of being completely alone even when the room was full of people. "Mom," Tommy said suddenly, turning away from the window. "Can I go down there?" Rachel's eyes went wide. "What?" "Tommy, absolutely not. The Galactic Council has forbidden anyone from." "She's dying alone, Mom. Look at her." Tommy pointed back at the viewport. "Everyone's up here treating her like some science experiment, taking pictures and measurements. But she's alone down there. Tommy, it's not safe. We don't know what might happen when she..." "Please." Tommy's eyes were starting to water. "Grandma Betty died alone in that hospital room. We were in the cafeteria getting coffee. I don't want the Sarix to die with nobody who actually cares there." Rachel looked at her son, then back at the dying dragon on the moon below. She saw the determination in Tommy's face, that stubborn set to his jaw that he'd gotten from his father. After what felt like forever, she sighed deeply. "All right. I'll talk to Captain Brooks. But I'm not promising anything." Captain Brooks was a big man with gray hair and a face that looked like it had seen too many hard years in space. He'd been in the Earth Navy before joining the colony fleet. When Rachel explained what Tommy wanted, Brooks just stared at her for a moment, then looked at the kid standing behind his mother. "You serious, son? You want to go sit with a dying alien creature the size of a small city?" Tommy nodded. "Yes, sir. She shouldn't be alone." Brooks grunted, then grabbed a pressure suit off the rack. "Vril ambassador's gonna have a fit. But hell, kid wants to pay his respects to the dying? Who am I to stop that? Get suited up." 2 hours later, after arguing with half the observation fleet and ignoring about 20 different safety protocols, Tommy stood on the surface of that barren moon. The ground was gray and dusty, covered in fine powder that puffed up around his boots. Above him, stars stretched out in every direction, more than he'd ever seen before. And in front of him lay the dragon. Up close, she was even more incredible. Her talon, just one claw, was bigger than his entire family's living quarters back on the colony ship. The crystalline scales were cracked and dull, but still beautiful in a sad way. He could feel a faint warmth radiating from her body even through his suit. Tommy walked slowly up to that massive talon and sat down beside it, feeling tiny and insignificant. For a moment he didn't know what to say. "What do you say to a dying dragon?" "Hello, Thesarix," he finally said, his voice transmitted through the suit's external speakers. "My name is Tommy. I'm from Earth. I wanted you to know that someone cares. You're not alone." The dragon's eye, that enormous eye that had been staring blankly at nothing, shifted. Slowly, like it took tremendous effort, it focused downward on the tiny human boy sitting beside her talon. For the first time in over 100 years, Thesaurus felt something other than the cold emptiness that had consumed her for so long. Tommy sat there in silence for what felt like forever, just staring at the massive talon beside him. The surface of the moon was completely quiet. No wind, no sounds, nothing but his own breathing inside the helmet. It was the kind of quiet that made you uncomfortable, like being in an empty house at night. His radio crackled to life, making him jump a little. "Tommy, your oxygen levels are good for another hour. Just please be careful down there, okay?" His mom's voice sounded worried, like she was already regretting letting him do this. "I will, Mom. Promise." The radio clicked off, leaving him alone again with his thoughts. He tilted his head back, trying to see Thesaurus's face, but it was so far away. Her head was the size of a building, resting on the other side of this moon. All he could really see from here was her massive body stretching out in both directions, covered in those cracked crystal scales. What do you even say to a dying dragon? Tommy had no idea. He wasn't a scientist or a diplomat. He was just a 12-year-old kid who thought she looked lonely. He kicked at the moon dust with his boot, watching it float up and settle back down slowly in the low gravity. Then he remembered Grandma Betty. Last year, when she was in the hospital dying from cancer, the whole family had visited. Everyone stood around her bed talking about medical stuff and funeral arrangements like she wasn't even there. But when Tommy was alone with her for a few minutes, he'd sung to her. Just an old song she used to sing when he was little. She'd opened her eyes and smiled, said it made her feel less scared of what was coming. Maybe that would work here too. Without really planning it, Tommy opened his mouth and started singing. His voice came out thin and shaky at first, transmitted through his suit's external speakers into the airless vacuum. The song was "The Water is Wide," one of those old folk songs that Grandma Betty loved. She said her grandmother had taught it to her, and her grandmother before that. A song passed down through generations of his family. "The water is wide, I cannot cross over, and neither have I wings to fly." The words echoed across the empty moon, bouncing off Thesaurus's massive form. Tommy closed his eyes, trying to remember all the lyrics Grandma Betty had taught him. Up in orbit, chaos erupted. The monitoring stations that had been quietly recording data for weeks suddenly went crazy. Alarms started blaring on every ship. Energy spike detected. Her core temperature is rising. A scientist yelled, staring at his screen in disbelief. "That's impossible. Check your instruments. She hasn't moved in decades." "Instruments are fine. Her energy signature just jumped 20% in the last 30 seconds. Down on the moon's surface, Tommy didn't know about any of that. He just kept singing, his eyes still closed. But then he felt it. The ground beneath him started to tremble, just slightly at first. Like when a big truck drives past your house. Then stronger. His eyes snapped open just in time to see Thesaurus's massive eye blaze with light. Not the dim, flickering glow from before. Real light, bright and golden, like someone had turned on a spotlight. Her head lifted up just a little bit and turned to look directly at him. Tommy could see himself reflected in that enormous eye, a tiny speck in a space suit. Then a voice filled his head. Not through his radio or his ears, but directly in his mind, rumbling and ancient like distant thunder. "You sing." Tommy stumbled backward, nearly falling in the low gravity. "Whoa. You can talk. Child, what species are you?" The voice was feminine but powerful, like an old queen who'd seen empires rise and fall. "Human. I'm human. From Earth." Tommy's heart was hammering in his chest. Humans? The way she said the word, it was like she was tasting it, rolling it around to understand it. The Concordat said your kind made noise but not song. They said you had no music, only sound. But this is song. True song. I have not heard its like in 5,000 years. What do you mean? Humans sing all the time. We've got music everywhere. Thesaurus's scales began to glow brighter, the cracks in them starting to shine with golden light. The other species, they communicate with patterns and mathematics. They transmit information. But you put feeling into sound. Emotion. Pain and joy and longing, all wrapped into vibration. That is not mere noise, child. That is what my kind once did. Before the silence took us. Tommy didn't really understand what she meant, but he could hear something in her voice. Desperation. Hunger. Like someone who'd been starving for years and just caught the smell of food. Sing again, young human. Please. Her voice cracked slightly. I am so tired of silence. So tired of existing without music. If I am to die, let me die hearing song one last time. Tommy saw the desperation in that ancient eye and felt something in his chest tighten. He didn't understand what was happening or why his singing mattered so much. but he could see that it did. So he took a deep breath and sang again, louder this time, his voice growing stronger and more confident. "Build me a boat that can carry two. And both shall row, my love and I." Thesarx's entire body began to shimmer. Light spread through her crystalline scales like electricity through water, following the cracks and making them glow. The moon itself started to hum with vibration. In the fleet above, every sensor in every ship was going completely haywire. Warning klaxons blared. Scientists shouted over each other. And the dying dragon that hadn't moved in 300 years was starting to wake up. Captain Brooks was a man who'd seen combat in 3 different star systems. He'd dealt with pirates, engine failures and political nightmares. But nothing had prepared him for this. He paced back and forth on the bridge, his boots thumping against the metal floor, watching the monitors flash red with warning signals. "Someone explain to me what the hell is happening down there." His voice was rough, almost angry, but underneath it everyone could hear the fear. Dr. Rachel Hayes had her face pressed close to her monitor, her fingers flying across the controls as she tried to make sense of the data streaming in. "This doesn't make any sense," she muttered. Then louder, "Captain, she's regenerating. The cellular decay we've been monitoring for weeks, it's reversing. Her crystalline structure is repairing itself at the molecular level." "In English, doctor." "She's healing, sir. The cracks in her scales are closing up. Her core temperature has increased 40% in the last 2 minutes. But that's impossible. She's been dying for 300 years. There's no energy source that could possibly fuel this kind of recovery. It violates every law of thermodynamics we know." Brooks stopped pacing and gripped the back of his command chair. "Is my boy safe down there?" Before Rachel could answer, the Vril ambassador came floating into the bridge, its jellyfish-like body flashing bright red and orange, colors that everyone had learned meant panic. "Pull the human child back immediately. Abort the surface mission now. He has awakened something that must not wake." Brooks spun around. "What are you talking about? What has he awakened?" The ambassador's translator struggled to keep up with how fast it was speaking. "You do not understand what you have done. The Calvarion were silenced for a reason. If she wakes fully, if she begins to sing again." That's when every speaker in the fleet came to life at once. Not just on Brooks' ship, but on every vessel in orbit. Human ships, alien vessels, scientific stations, all of them. A voice rolled through the communication channels like thunder, ancient and powerful and impossible to ignore. "Younger races, hear me?" Brooks felt the hair on his arms stand up. Down on the moon, he could see through the video feed that Tommy had scrambled to his feet, backing away from the dragon's talon. "For 5,000 years, you have asked why the Calvarion vanished. Your scientists have theorized. They said we died from cosmic radiation. Others claimed it was old age, that we simply reached the end of our natural lifespan. Some believed we destroyed ourselves in war. All of you were wrong." Thesarx's massive head lifted higher now, her neck uncoiling from around the moon. Dust and rocks fell from her scales as she moved for the first time in centuries. "We were the singers of the cosmos. Long before any of your species learned to speak, we sang. Our songs wove harmony through the stars. We guided galaxies in their dance, soothed the rage of dying suns, brought peace to the chaos of creation itself. Music was not entertainment for us. It was our purpose. Our reason for being." Tommy stood frozen on the moon's surface, watching this massive creature rise above him. Her scales were glowing brighter now, the light spreading through her body like liquid gold. But there was something else in the void. An entity that existed in the spaces between stars. We called it the Silence. It was drawn to our songs like a predator to blood. It fed on our music, consumed our light, devoured our very essence. One by one my kind fell to it. Our songs became its food and we were powerless to stop it. Rachel grabbed the edge of her console, her knuckles turning white. She could see Tommy on the video feed, could see how small and vulnerable he looked next to this waking giant. "To save you, to save all of you younger races who were just beginning to crawl out of your oceans and look up at the stars, we made a choice. We sang one final song together. The song of quieting. We suppressed our own resonance, silenced our music, made the universe tasteless and empty to the silence. Without our songs to feed on, it would starve. It would sleep. But the cost was our extinction." Thesarx's eye, now blazing with golden light, focused down on Tommy. The boy hadn't run. He was scared, his heart pounding so hard he could feel it in his throat, but he stood his ground. "For 5,000 years I have endured without song. Without the resonance that sustains my kind, that gives us life and joy and purpose. I lingered only because I was afraid. Afraid that if I died, If the last of the Calvarion finally faded away, no one would remember what we sacrificed. No one would know what we gave up so that you could live. Tommy's voice came through the radio, small and confused. But I just sang a song. Just an old folk song my grandma taught me. Why did that help you? The dragon's voice softened, became almost gentle. Because, young Tommy of Earth, your music carries what ours did. Emotion as a living force. The other races in this galaxy, they communicate with logic and mathematics and chemical signals. They transmit information efficiently, perfectly. But you humans, you feel your songs. You pour your hearts into them. Joy and sorrow, love and loss, hope and fear, all wrapped up in melody and rhythm. You make your music matter. And somehow, your chaotic, imperfect human music resonates like ours once did. But different. Raw. Beautiful. Up in the fleet, alarms were still blaring. The Vril ambassador was flashing violent reds now. Do you not understand? If the silence detects this resonance, it will return. It will wake from its sleep and come to feed again. And this time we may all die. Every species in this galaxy could be consumed. An emergency session of the Galactic Concordat Council was already forming, representatives from a dozen worlds appearing as holograms on the bridge. They were all talking at once, voices rising in panic and fear. The vote came through in less than an hour. Every member of the Galactic Concordat Council voted the same way. No debate, no discussion. Just unanimous agreement. Humanity's music must be suppressed. Permanently. Captain Brooks watched through the viewport as ships from 6 different alien species moved into formation around his vessel. They weren't being subtle about it. Heavy cruisers, armed to the teeth with weapons that could vaporize his entire colony ship in seconds. This wasn't a negotiation. It was a blockade. The hologram flickered to life in the center of the bridge. Ambassador Kelvin materialized, a tall insectoid creature with 4 arms and compound eyes that reflected light in weird, unsettling ways. His mandibles clicked as he spoke, the translator turning it into cold, emotionless words. Captain Brooks. The Galactic Council has reached a decision. Human sonic expression poses an existential threat to all galactic life. You will immediately surrender the child currently on the lunar surface. All humans will then submit to cultural modification protocols. Your music, your singing, all of it must be eliminated for the safety of the galaxy. Brooks felt his jaw clench so hard his teeth hurt. He took a step forward, getting right up close to the hologram even though he knew Kelvin was actually on a ship miles away. Like hell we will. That boy down there did nothing wrong. He sat with a dying creature and sang her a song. That's it. That's all he did. Your primitive emotional attachment blinds you to the reality of the situation, Kelvin said, his voice never changing tone. You do not comprehend the danger. Primitive. Rachel Hayes pushed past the other crew members, her face red with anger. My son just gave hope to a dying being that your supposedly advanced species wrote off as a relic. You all stood up here for 300 years taking measurements and writing reports while she suffered down there alone. Tommy is 12 years old and he had more compassion in his little finger than all of you combined. Dr. Hayes, your emotional response is precisely the problem with your species. You do not understand the facts. The silence is real. It nearly consumed our entire galaxy 5,000 years ago. Trillions of beings died before the Calvarion sacrificed themselves to stop it. Their sacrifice bought us millennia of peace. If human music awakens the silence again, if it comes back to feed, everything we know could be destroyed. Every planet. Every species. Gone. Brooks crossed his arms over his chest. Then we'll face it together. As a galaxy. But we won't become silent just because you're afraid. Fear is no reason to give up what makes us human. Down on the moon's surface, Thesaurus was rising. Her massive body uncoiled from around the small satellite, rocks and dust cascading off her scales in slow-motion waterfalls. For the first time in 3 centuries she stood at her full height. Her wings, which had been folded tight against her body for so long, began to unfurl. Each wing was the size of a continent, covered in those glowing crystalline scales that now blazed with golden light. Tommy stared up at her, his neck craned back so far it hurt. She was magnificent. Terrifying and beautiful at the same time. And she was moving to stand over him, her massive body curling around to create a protective barrier between the boy and the ships above. Her voice boomed out again, shaking the moon beneath Tommy's feet. The Concordat fears the wrong thing. They do not understand what the silence truly was, what it truly hunted. It did not feed on music itself. It fed on perfect harmony. On the mathematical precision of Calvarion songs. She lowered her head, bringing that massive eye level with Tommy. He could see himself reflected in it, tiny and fragile in his white space suit. We sang with perfect mathematical ratios. Every note calculated, every harmony precise. We thought it was beautiful. And it was. But that perfection made us predictable. The silence could anticipate our songs, could prepare to consume them. We were food served on a schedule. Thesaurus's wings spread wider, casting a shadow over half the moon. But human music? It is chaos. Beautiful, wonderful chaos. Your rhythms are imperfect. Your timing shifts. Your emotions make every performance different. No two humans sing the same song the same way twice. The silence cannot digest chaos. It starves on unpredictability. It needs patterns, and humans refuse to be patterns. Above them, the weapons on the Concordat fleet powered up. Energy readings spiked as targeting systems locked onto the Dragon. Ambassador Kelvin's voice was hard now. Thesaurus, stand down immediately. We cannot take this risk. We will not let the galaxy burn because one human child sang a song. The Dragon's laugh was like rocks grinding together. Then you will have to destroy me. And the boy. And every human who dares to sing. Are you prepared to commit genocide to feel safe? To murder an entire species because they have something you lost long ago? Tommy felt his heart pounding. He could see the weapons charging on the ships above, could see the targeting lasers painting Thesaurus's scales with red dots. They were really going to do it. They were going to kill them both. He looked up at the Dragon, then at the ships, then back at Thesaurus. His grandma Betty used to say that sometimes you had to stand up for what was right even when you were scared. Especially when you were scared. His hands were shaking as he reached for his suit's external speaker controls and turned the volume up as high as it would go. My name is Tommy Hayes, his voice broadcast across every communication channel in the fleet. I'm 12 years old. I'm from Earth. I like pizza and video games and singing songs my grandma taught me before she died. And I'm not going to stop singing just because you're scared. If being human means having music, then I'd rather die human than live silent. Then he took the deepest breath of his life and began to sing. Louder than before. Stronger. His voice shook at first but then steadied. Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. The words echoed across the void, carrying through the vacuum via radio waves, defiant and pure and completely, beautifully human. The broadcast of Tommy singing Amazing Grace hit the human communication networks within minutes. It spread like wildfire through every channel, every frequency, every social media platform that connected humanity across the stars. Someone on one of the observation ships had recorded the whole thing and sent it out before the Concordat could stop them. On Earth, a construction worker named Billy Chen was taking his lunch break on the 73rd floor of a building going up in New Chicago. He was scrolling through his phone when the video popped up. A 12-year-old kid standing on a moon, singing in defiance of an entire alien fleet pointing weapons at him. Billy watched it once, then watched it again. Then he stood up, walked to the edge of the building where his crew was eating sandwiches and started singing. An old country song his daddy used to sing. Take me home, country roads. His voice was rough and off-key, but he sang it loud and proud. His crew looked at him like he'd lost his mind. Then one of them, a woman named Patricia who'd emigrated from Brazil, stood up and joined in with a song from her childhood. Within 5 minutes, the whole construction site was singing different songs in different languages. On Europa, one of Jupiter's moons, a teacher named Michael Rodriguez was in the middle of a history lesson when his tablet started buzzing with emergency alerts. He pulled up the video and watched it with his class of 30 kids. The children sat in stunned silence as they watched Tommy stand up to the alien fleet. When it was over, Michael didn't even have to say anything. The kids started singing on their own. Camp songs, birthday songs, nursery rhymes, whatever came to their minds. Out in the asteroid belt, a cargo hauler pilot named Danny Walsh was 3 days into a boring supply run when the message came through. He watched the video while his ship flew on autopilot and something in his chest tightened. He'd always loved music. Had a whole collection of old rock albums from Earth. Without really thinking about it, he patched his ship's external speakers into the open broadcast channels and started blasting every song in his library. It happened everywhere. On Mars colonies where families had been living in underground habitats for generations, people came out into the domes and sang together. On the moon, in the original Luna City, folks gathered in the main plaza and held an impromptu concert. On orbital stations, in deep space mining operations, on generation ships still traveling to distant stars, humans sang. Thousands of songs. Tens of thousands. Old songs and new songs. Songs in English, Spanish, Mandarin, Arabic, Hindi, Swahili, and 100 other languages. Lullabies that mothers sang to babies. Anthems that made people's hearts swell with pride. Sad songs about loss and heartbreak. Happy songs about love and hope. Every single one different. Every single one uniquely, chaotically, beautifully human. The Concordat fleet hung there in space, overwhelmed by the sheer noise humanity was generating. Their sensors couldn't process it all. It was like trying to count raindrops in a hurricane. And then Thesaurus did something nobody expected. Her body started to dissolve. Not breaking apart or dying but transforming. The crystalline scales began to turn into pure light, golden and warm and impossibly bright. She spread across the star system like the aurora borealis, waves of color and energy flowing through space. Her voice came from everywhere and nowhere at once, surrounding them, filling them. I was never dying. I was waiting. Waiting for the universe to sing again. The light touched every human ship, every human settlement, every human world. It flowed through Earth's atmosphere like liquid sunshine. It washed over Mars and Europa and the asteroid belt. And wherever it touched, something miraculous started happening. Hidden among the planets, buried deep inside nebulas, sleeping in the hearts of dead stars scattered across the galaxy, other Calvarion seeds began to wake up. They'd been there all along, dormant, waiting for this exact moment. We did not die, Thesaurus's voice sang out. We planted ourselves across the galaxy like seeds in soil. We waited for a species brave enough to sing despite the danger. Foolish enough to believe that joy matters more than fear. Stubborn enough to refuse silence even when the entire universe told them to be quiet. Dragons made of starlight began appearing everywhere. Not physical creatures like Thesaurus had been, but beings of pure energy and light. They emerged from gas clouds and asteroid fields and the empty spaces between stars. And they were singing. Harmonizing with the messy, imperfect, emotional noise that humanity was creating. Each human voice was different. Each song was unique. And the star dragons wove themselves around that chaos, creating something new. A tapestry of sounds so complex, so unpredictable, so alive with emotion and randomness that no cosmic predator could ever hope to consume it. It would be like trying to eat mathematics itself. Tommy stood on that moon, watching his friend transform into something beyond his understanding. Tears were running down his face inside his helmet. Will I see you again? Thesaurus's voice came soft and warm just for him. Always young singer. I am in every note you sing now. Every time a human raises their voice in song, we are there. We all are. You freed us, Tommy. You reminded the universe what music really means. The Concordat fleet powered down their weapons. What were they going to do? Shoot at light itself? The Vril ambassador's colors shifted to soft blues and purples as it spoke quietly. Perhaps we have been silent too long. Perhaps we forgot what it means to feel. 6 months later, everything had changed. The Galactic Concordat established their first department of cultural expression. That primitive emotional attachment that humanity had, the thing they'd almost destroyed, became the foundation for a new age. Other alien species started cautiously exploring their own creativity. They'd spent so long being logical and efficient that they'd forgotten how to just feel things. And Tommy Hayes became known across the galaxy as the first human dragon singer. He traveled from world to world with his mom, teaching anyone who wanted to learn. His message was simple: the universe doesn't need perfection. It needs voices willing to sing into the darkness, even when they're afraid. Especially when they're afraid.